wasn't there in 1973. Most of us probably weren't there in 1973. A lot of the individuals who pushed this through probably aren't even alive anymore. But the breach was made. And here's the part that's going to shock you. The High Court judges themselves, they know exactly what I'm about to share. But to this day, no one has ever successfully brought it to them and challenged it in the High Court. What we're going to do to start is just open up section 128 of the Commonwealth Constitution, right? This section here is titled Mode of Altering the Constitution. So this is what must happen if we intend to alter the Constitution in any way. This Constitution shall not be altered except in the following manner. The proposed law for the alteration must be passed by an absolute majority of each House of the Parliament. So the Parliament comes first. Then it says that proposed law has to be submitted in each state and territory to the electors qualified to vote. Now, who's the electors qualified to vote? Just in case you're not sure, that's you. You are the final step. And then down in the fourth paragraph, and if in a majority of the states, a majority of the electors voting approve the proposed law, and if a majority of all the electors voting also approve the proposed law, it shall be presented to the Governor-General for the Queen's assent. Now, in just regular layman's terms, in plain English, any alteration to the Constitution, any proposed law that alters it, must ultimately be approved by the people, by referendum. Very straightforward. Alteration is the key word here. Not how you choose to interpret alteration, but not is it just symbolic. It just says, shall not be altered except in the following manner. So what law was it that they actually passed without our approval in 1973? It was called the Royal Style and Titles Act of 1973. This is not a rumour. It's an act of the Australian Parliament. It appears on the Federal Register as an act in force. It's titled number 114 of 1973, an act relating to the royal style and titles. So it received royal assent on the 19th of October 1973 under the Whitlam government, and it commenced the same day. So what did this law actually do? This law authorised a new style and title for the monarch. Now, to see how serious that is, you have to look at what the Queen's title was before and then what it became after. So let's start with 1953. In the Royal Style and Titles Act of 1953, the Queen's title for Australia was Elizabeth II, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom, Australia and her other realms and territories, Queen, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith. Now that particular wording explicitly ties Australia to the United Kingdom. Same crown as the United Kingdom, same sovereign authority, still Defender of the Faith, which is an English title. Now watch what happens in 1973. In the Royal Style and Titles Act of 1973, the new wording is Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen of Australia and her other realms and territories, Head of the Commonwealth. So the words of the United Kingdom is gone, and the words Defender of the Faith is gone. And for the first time in Australian law, the monarch is described as the Queen of Australia, no longer Queen of the United Kingdom and Australia. Now that is not punctuation, that is a structural shift. That's Parliament redefining the Crown itself, the source of authority that the Constitution actually relies on. And here's the issue. That change was done without a referendum of the Australian people. It was defended as a symbolic step and described as constitutional evolution to reflect Australia's independent status. And look, if Australia wants to evolve its constitutional identity, fine. If we as a nation choose to say we now have a distinct Australian crown, fine. That's our choice. That would be what the people voted for. But the people have to approve that first. Section 128 of our Constitution says so. And they didn't. We weren't asked. We weren't even given a vote. So when the Whitlam government and the Parliament in 1973 relabelled the monarch from Queen of the United Kingdom and Australia to just the Queen of Australia, they weren't just changing cosmetics. They were actually cutting the formal link to the British Crown and asserting a separate Australian crown without going through the only lawful process the Constitution actually gives us for an alteration. You see, the thing is, the Constitution doesn't care whether you call it stylistic. It doesn't care whether you call it symbolic. It doesn't care if you call it just evolution. It says word for word, this Constitution shall not be altered except in the following manner. And in 1973, that manner was not followed. So the question now isn't, was it symbolic? The question is, did the rule book that governs this country get sidestepped completely? Did it just get pushed to the side and overlooked? And if it did, what does that mean for everything that was built on top of it, for everything that was built after it since 1973? Let's talk consequences, because this is the part you're never supposed to even ask. See, if you redefine the monarch from shared with the United Kingdom to completely independent Queen of Australia, you're not just changing a title, you're changing the source, the very source of authority that signs our laws, that appoints our judges, that issues commissions and gives assent. Now that raises brutal questions. Did Parliament go beyond its power? Because Parliament can pass laws for the peace, order and good government of the Commonwealth, but Parliament cannot amend the constitutional structure itself without a referendum, without your approval. So did the Whitlam government go past its lawful limits? If the 1973 Act didn't follow Section 128 of our Constitution, was it invalid from day one? Now, if the answer to that is yes, then what about everything that